Brisbane, Australia. This is episode 99 of The Normal Blokes, a podcast dedicated to improving the competitive 40k experience. I'm Denise, and today we've got Luke.
Hey guys.
Jordan.
What's up?
And Liam.
Back again.
So, thank you for joining us tonight, everyone. We've got the whole squad with a V, here to talk about the meta. So, look, it's the Wild Wild West right now, isn't it, guys? It's pretty full on. It's pretty crazy. There's a lot of planes. You know, they've brought planes to a gunfight. I don't like it. But, I guess we're going to talk about the things that are doing well locally, the things that are doing well, big tournaments internationally, and how do we fight it? What do you have in your toolkit to go up against these factions? Or if you're playing these factions, good on you. You're probably winning. But we also talk about a few meta armies that, some people could lean into to fight some of these big, bad nasties. And talk about a few unconventional units at the end as well. But how are we all doing today, guys? We good?
Yeah, going really good, man.
Good. Keen to break down this zoo meta, see all these crazy things coming out.
This wild meta that it is.
Yeah, I didn't realize we all started playing, Aeronautica Imperialis about a month ago. Didn't realize that.
It's back to the flying cheese, isn't it? How the world comes back around.
Oh, geez. So, on that topic, should we just lean into the big green elephant in the room, the Speed War? So I know we talked about the Speed War or Orcs in general a few episodes ago, thinking they'd be a bit of a threat. And I guess the data's not showing, like there was a thing that came up on Competitive 40k on Facebook in the tournament, only had about 5% Orc players, for example. So they're not making up the numbers as some of the big factions, like when Marines or Drakari, are doing well, make up lots of numbers at a tournament. But my goodness, they're relevant, right? Like, I don't know, what's your experience against the Speed War, guys?
I mean,
Yep.
Oh, you go, Jordan. Far away.
It's very oppressive. It hurts. It's one of those things that I think people are struggling to interact with it, and I think when there's a list that you struggle to interact with, some armies can interact with it, but it's now becoming down to who goes first. Whoever goes first can possibly beat the Speed War, and if the Speed War goes first, it pretty much tables you on a turn.
Yeah.
So it's not a fun 40k experience.
I mean, we saw on
No.
the most recent thing, or that's hit the competitive 40k page, is about the recent tournament with someone getting very, very badly damaged in one turn from the Speed War.
Yeah,
so
the
we've all
SoCal
seen
Open,
how, the SoCal in the finals, the Speed War did a lot of damage in turn one. And look, we're experiencing the same thing here. They can hit very hard, and it's pretty hard to figure out in the meta how to deal with that, considering at the same time they have Ramshackle, and it is a 2 damage meta, so it's pretty hard to deal with vehicle spam when it's all -1 damage, and the most common thing in the game is 2 damage. Yeah, it's difficult, but I mean, we'll get there in time. Hopefully, we'll figure something out.
Yeah, Liam, you were going to say something?
Well, the only thing I was going to say about it is that, do you guys actually remember what it was like last edition or even the edition before this, where you would actually have units that were unwoundable? And one of the things that GW made really, really clear about this new edition, and what they actually spent a lot of time doing, and I think early on in the edition actually worked quite well, is that anything can kill anything now, right? Like there's no, it's impossible for me to damage you sort of situations. The problem is that I feel like just because of the power of some of these new builds, that we're almost back to that, in the sense that if certain things happen, there is actually nothing I can do. And so it's more important now to come to the table with the right tools than ever before. Because like last edition, if you play knights and all you've got is strength 4, you physically couldn't wound them in 7th and 8th edition. But now you can. And so if you're playing Speed War, you have to make sure you bring the tools to verse it. And it's not just Speed War. There's plenty of other big fish in this pond.
I think that
Yeah.
you touched on something there, which is there's a lot of boogeymen in the shed. You know, you got to account for Admech, you got to account for Speedwire now, you got to account for Grey Knights. Nids are going to hit the scene soon. You're going to have to account for them, and you kind of feel like you're playing a game of Twister, and you keep trying to like press the dots, but you've only got a certain number of limbs, and it's difficult.
And it's so like the one thing with the Speedwire, it's like we talked about on our episode a few episodes ago. It's really prone to strong combat because it, with all the buggies and stuff, it can't really fight its way out of stuff as well as other armies, and it's a bit prone to obsec, and it also still dies. Like it's quite fragile. So you've got this interesting army that's so polarizing. Like if the Speedwire goes first and it hits you hard, we've seen what it can do. But then you've got this situation where if you bring the tools to combat the Speedwire and you go first, you can actually slap it pretty hard. But then do those same tools work into Drakari, into Admech, into, GK, which is the next thing we'll go into, and even bigger, the new Tyranids, which we haven't seen as much of, but my goodness, can they kill a buggy or two in shooting? Yeah, weren't you saying, Liam, that you're watching a game where Hiveguard in 2 turns killed like 10 plus Venoms?
I certainly did. Brian, if you're listening to this, I know you're getting grief counseling after that game you played against Eric. Denise, you touched on something interesting there where a lot of these really scary medalists, they're super scary because there's an element of the game that's taken sort of, I don't know if you agree with this, but taken out of control of the players.
Yeah.
And by that I mean it's like that first turn roll, right? I remember sort of thinking about how you're right, after those stats came out for some events in the States, how orcs were actually quite a low percentage of players. So I was really curious to look at some of their stats here in Australia, like the down under pairings stats. So I actually did get some stats for orcs. Thanks very much for that, down under pairings. And I found something really interesting, and it's that the orcs in general, since the new codex, so I can't confirm these are all Speedwires, but orcs in general have an 89% win rate if they go first. Orcs have which is actually the highest of any faction.
That's higher than Iron Hands were at the end of 8th.
Yeah,
and
the main component. Yeah, and the main component of that being that I think it's the out of line of sight shooting, because you go first and you cannot stop it. Like there's no way for you to not be shot, some of your units to die, or I don't know, all of your units to die to buggies in some way or another. But then you add in the WAS bombs, and like we saw at SoCal, you have the situation where a 2,000 point shooting list of orcs can basically engage you with 1,700 points of their army in the first turn, and that's why it's so potent. To put this, I guess, in perspective, I think it's really important to understand how much worse it is if orcs go second. So orcs have a 69% win rate, which is still very, very good when they go second. Now, it still means they're winning over half of their games, but that's actually not inordinately high. And it's sort of to be considered that it's a very, very strong list that's probably going to win 2 out of 3 of its games at a tournament, but will probably lose 1 if it goes second. So that disparity of 20%, 30%, right, I'm bad at maths, 20% is huge. Like it's massive. If you can actually say you're going to win out of 9 or 10 of your games if you go first, that's a really big problem. And so Denise touched on this before. If you're playing into Speedwire, yeah, sure, you can try and play. You can try and make a plan for if you go second, but it's also probably important to really double down on the value if you actually win that first turn roll. Like it's probably important to actually have the right tools to go, okay, I've gotten lucky. I'm playing the boogeyman. Let's go, son.
Yeah. And that's why, like, I know some factions have access to this. I'm personally investing a lot in redeploy warlord traits and things for this exact reason. You can deploy super aggro ready to go on the off chance you go first. And then if you're not going first, you can get out of there, put stuff into strat reserves, or, just pull your army back into ruins. Because I think having that option to just put the foot on the accelerator in some matchups can be important. I think there's only realistically a handful of armies that can kind of cop the full Speedwire turn 1, to be honest. And we'll go into that. We'll go into that in the second kind of half of this ep. But I think you guys ready to move on to GK?
Yep,
Yeah, man.
let's do it.
All right. So all I'm going to say about Grey Knights is imagine every single model in your opponent's army is a Blade Guard veteran. That's me done. Who wants to talk any more about that?
Nope, let's move on. All right, next is minions.
No. All right. Who has that something impactful and insightful to say about GK? I know their secondary is quite strong. Their combat's pretty crazy. They can do some mortal wounds. I've won a total of 1 game against the new Grey Knights. I've lost about 6. And one thing is, their infantry is amazing. Their Dread Knights are very difficult to put down if you don't have the tools. And they've got some jank movement. And their secondary game is really strong as well. The one thing I lean on against Grey Knights is having access to a Border Witch to kill the MSU to just get a 15 secondary. But I guess their combat profile and shooting profile is actually quite similar to the Speedwire, aren't they?
So I believe the combat profile, I guess it kind of resembles that of an earlier Blood Angels army. A lot of MSU, they can hammer hand units, they got lots of attacks, them all 2 damage across the board now.
Yeah.
Bit like, I guess, like similar to the Speedwire. Speedwire just does it from the other end of the board and doesn't even need to see you.
That's it.
Yeah, so I think that the GK builds are really good. I think that another thing that's the strength of GK is its mobility, its ability to teleport units right in front of your face, to teleport Dread Knights, Grandmaster Dread Knights. Like you have to then deal with these they can fucking 3-up invulnerable. They can. You shoot them, they can re-teleport to another part of the table. I've played against Nick Argent on his GK, and that was probably after about a 3-month hiatus. And I quickly learned a lot of things about that, and actually changed a few things in my list to take on the GK, which that same thing helped me tech into the Speedwire a bit better and into the new Tyranids as well.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. Sorry,
yeah.
I was going to say, in the same profile, neg 1 damage hurts them a little bit, similar to how it hurts a Speedwire. Liam, what about your experiences, I guess, versus GK? You've had some success.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned that their secondary game is really, really good, because I kind of find that's actually the key to victory against GK. So the Psychic, like their version of Purifying Ritual, it actually requires you to do multiple psychic powers in a turn, and almost invariably most GK players want to get all those points early. So I find if you actually push, especially if you try to make them kind of put units out of where they want to be, they're actually not going to smite you. They're not actually going to use all the psychic powers they want because they're trying to get the points for that. To be fair, I've had success playing against GKs, specifically with Thousand Suns recently. And part of that is, well, first of all, AP2 bolt guns are good at killing Space Marines, and Space Marines, psychic cousins. That's just a thing. The other thing is that +1 to wound AP2, AP3 is probably the perfect profile for fighting Dread Knights as well. And the final thing is I'm actually better at denying than even GKs, because I have a stratagem to deny on 3d6, add the dice together. So the key powers like Gate of Infinity or whatever, I just make sure they don't go off. So there's a few things there that make that particular matchup bad. But yeah, I guess my advice is primarily just, you can't play defensive against GKs because they're just going to score all the points sitting on their home objectives with Purifying Ritual, right? They're just going to get all the points. You have to actually force them to make mistakes, force them to play the game.
Yep.
Yeah, so
you're right.
I'll add to that as well. Is so last edition, before the Codex came out, I obviously played GK. I still plan to play it now, but at the time I haven't really painted my army, so I haven't really had the tournament experience with it. However, I do notice that there's a stark difference between the old GK and the new GK. Before, the old GK kind of feels like what the Speed War feels like. Like that's how I feel with players. I get shot with 2 damage, like a bunch of 2 damage shots from Analyze Sight, and I can't do anything. And you kind of feel like you're forced to do something. Now GK is a little bit more MSU, deal damage in all phases of the game. I find that if GK isn't dealing damage in all phases of the game, shooting, psychic, and combat, I think it becomes more difficult for them. So, like Liam said there, Liam in this instance, when he plays his T-Suns, he doesn't actually have to, or he has an answer to all the psychic damage that GK can deal. whereas other armies may not always have the chance, opting to go for the Abhor the Witch sort of counter to that. So it's important when you verse GK to try and mitigate them dealing damage in all phases of the game, because that's what they pay the points premium for, right? And if you're letting them get that efficiency out of every unit, then that's when, you know, fighting GK can be quite difficult. As for the Dread Knights, I mean, it depends on what you're bringing as well. I think as people kit and tool towards the AdMech flyers, the Speed War, and everything, people are going to start bringing more big damage guns, and I think that the Dread Knights will be phased out, and it will sort of swing to a more MSU style build, maybe with rhinos and stuff like that. That's kind of what I'm thinking will happen. But then again, it's hard to say what's going to happen. But yeah, I think the counter is avoid letting them do damage in all phases of the game. Like Liam said, get on top of the points early. Try and completely kill whole units, because each individual model is a psyker, and if one's left alive, they can still complete their secondaries, and that's something that you can't afford an elite MSU army to do. And yeah, that's kind of my sort of two cents.
Yeah, they're such a good skirmishing army now, aren't they? Like a strike's like what, 21 or 22 points?
Yeah, exactly. 20 points, I think.
Yeah,
22.
Something like that. So like 5 strikes, 110 points. And even like strikes, interceptors together, you know, in a list, you could run a whole bunch of them. They're just running around killing anything they touch, or any skirmishing unit that they touch, right? Like, if you compare them to like, let's say Vanguard vets, or, you know, even AdMech infiltrators, you know, they cut right through them.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, like, the Speed War deals with GK quite well, which is, I think, why you're kind of seeing, if you go through, you know, 40k stats, and you look at all the tournaments and down on pairings as well, you will see that the top winning armies are normally orcs or something, and sometimes and Thousand Suns is quite common up there as well. less so the GK.
There's only a handful of players, unfortunately, that are stomping with Thousand Suns Halium.
That's true. If you go to any tournament with Liam, that's all you see at the
top. I've never heard of me. I have no idea.
I think one thing you mentioned there, Luke, with the Orc Speedwire, the one thing that GK have that's really nice is Tighter Shadows. That helps with the Speedwire game, which is super handy. I'm finding, you know, a lot of armies that have access to a Meg 1 of some kind. You know, if you combine that with a forest, then you're laughing. But yeah, that's super, super handy. But yeah, I guess, Liam, would you like to tell us a little bit about the new Tyranids? Because we all kind of think that they're going to be a big hit on the block in a couple of weeks when they get a bit more play.
Yeah, 100%. So Nids are kind of cool because, I mean, I think a lot of people have Tyranid armies, and there have been units that have kind of been staples of Tyranid armies. And what GW have done, unlike their normal sales strategy, is they gave really powerful rules to units that are already okay. Normally they pick something like, I don't know, Tomb Blades and give them amazing rules. But no, this time they gave really, really strong buffs to Hive Guard. So what Tyranids get now is they get a synaptic link abilities, which you pay a bit of a premium for, and then a unit, let's say, for example, Tyranid Warriors, can give another unit a buff. So you pay points, and then Tyranid Warriors get an ability where, for example, they pick another unit and they get +1 to hit. Now, there's a whole raft of these Synapse abilities. Suffice to say that all of them work, by and large, on Hive Guard. So you can actually combo a series of stratagems and warlord traits and synaptic link abilities to get Hive Guard to have any combination of, like, you know, +1 to hit, reroll all hits, Chapter Master, reroll wounds of 1 and 2, reroll damage, and exploding 6s to hit, double exploding 6s to hit if you're shooting 11 more models, and an extra AP on 6s to wound. So you've taken an already reasonably strong out of line of sight shooting unit, and you've basically made it a planet-ending missile, and then made them pay very little points premium for it. It's almost like it's the Orc Codex. No, jokes aside. I mean, it's Hive Guard are going to be really, really prevalent, but it's not the only thing Tyranid's got. So they also got some really cool buffs, because those synaptic link abilities don't just work on one unit. You can actually put them on a whole raft of other stuff. You can put that double exploding 6s to hit on, for example, a unit of Devil Gaunts, and with their, you know, Devourers, And oh my God, do they put out a lot of volume. There's actually a whole heap of cool stuff you can do with Tyranids. And the other thing is, you guys mentioned this before. Luke, you said that, for Dread Knights and Speedwire, people are going to be teching into high strength weapons. Well, Hiveguard is kind of a pretty perfect profile for shooting Orc buggies. And more importantly, you can get Hiveguard to be ignore AP 1 and 2, which is very, very relevant as well. So Hiveguard are awesome into the Speedwire. They're also pretty good into GKs and AdMech. Just a good meta pick at the moment.
Oh, mate, it's two things. Number one, I can't think of another Tyranid unit that, let's say you started playing at the start of 8th edition, right? I think Hiveguard have the best return on investment per dollar spent for any Tyranid unit that you could have picked up like 4 fucking years ago, and you would have played it for the last 4 years, right? They've been solid for so long.
Dude,
And
it's
now
like
they're even
4 or
more
3
solid.
editions.
Yeah, it's oh man, I'm trying to think of something that's been like strong for that time. But the second thing is like the Hive Fleet have just like gone onto this world and eaten a bunch of Speedwire like lists, and they're like, we need something that kills all the we got something that kills all the buggies. All right, we're good, boys. Let's roll out.
Oh my God, they ate a Squig.
Yeah,
It's like one Squig. They're like, oh my God, we can shoot these out of our cannon.
That's great. Yeah, so like I think the biggest elephant in the room with the NIDS list that a lot of people are looking at is Hiveguard. So I don't know, for me personally, I'm looking at stuff that can either reach out and shoot the Hiveguard or reach out and charge the Hiveguard as quick as I can. With the faction I'm playing, Deathwatch has got some ability to do that, but it's a situation where the Orc Speedwire gets hit by stuff like Neg wants to hit and, reasonable saves and cover, but the Hiveguard are super immune to that because of the stacking rerolls and the ignore cover base and the ability to push to Neg 3 AP. Sorry, Luke, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, for those who don't know the new changes to the Hiveguard, would you like to elaborate on them?
Look, I don't have my head wrapped around them. I've only played a few games against them, but I know there's ways to give them full rerolls to hit with a Warlord trait. There's ways to get them to reroll 1s and 2s to wound with, I believe it's a synaptic ability.
Oh, wow.
And ways to get exploding 6s to wound, not exploding 6s to wound, to get 6s to wound to have an extra AP. And then there's a strat, I believe it's called Relentless Fury or something like that, to get exploding 6s when you hit, so it counts as an additional hit. So you can have 12 shots from Hiveguard fully convert into like 14 or 15 wounds.
So I'll give a quick rundown. So you've got the Warlord trait Swarm Leader. So anyone within 9 inches in the command phase, you can select a Leviathan unit, give that unit full rerolls.
Yeah, right.
And then you've got the stratagem Denise mentioned, which is Relentless Flurry.
Oh, Flurry.
Yeah. So it's
like McFlurry. Okay.
Oh, all right. It's a sign.
We're all getting McFlurries after this.
Get that McFlurry. So it's in shooting or fight phase, any Leviathan unit. For 1 CP, they get exploding 6s. If the unit is 11 models or more, it's 2 CP. And Gene Stealers get exploding. They get 2 additional hits on exploding 6s. So Gene Stealers kind of benefit from it pretty well. But obviously, Hiveguard's a big one because you've also got Kronos. Kronos can get +1 to hit from the Warriors, and then they hit on 2s, rerolling 1s because they're Kronos.
So they don't need the rerolls.
Yeah, and Leviathan's also got a Warlord trait to allow you to reroll 1s and 2s to wound.
Yes, that's
as well.
One. Yeah.
So
that's pretty good. That's different. Eh?
Yeah.
Normally it's reroll 1s.
Especially against the Speedwire, where you're going to be rolling 1s and 2s as you failed wounds anyway, so you're re-rolling them. So you're turning your efficiency up. So you've got a Kronos unit that gets +1 to hit, exploding 6s from a psychic power. You've got Leviathan hitting on 3s full re-rolls, get exploding 6s from a stratagem that only cost them 1 CP, and then you can double tap with one of those units again.
Sorry,
you've got.
What was I going to say? Jordan, the reroll 1s and 2s to wound is actually a synaptic link power.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So you've got some
go.
really, really efficient. They're 270 points for 6 of them. So you're looking at a 500 point unit. That's 500 for the 2 units, or just over 500 points. And it can do most of the damage dealing because that's what are they? They shoot twice. So they shoot 2 shots each at 36 inch out of line of sight, and they ignore your cover.
Yeah.
And think, is there a possibility they can get an additional neg 1 to AP as well?
Yeah, on a win roll of 6. But I think the biggest
Yeah,
thing,
they can.
I think the biggest thing here is like, unlike the Speedwire, they're just not shifted by like good saves and neg 1 to hit. Like they'll just go straight through that. So you've actually got to like sit there and decide, okay, how am I going to either stop this thing shooting or kill it?
The only downside to Hive Guard is they're a 4-up. They're T5 and they're 3 wounds. So they've got no invulnerables. So they kind of can go to glass if they get hit by anything.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of actually getting to them because they
Yeah.
are, Tyranids are known for having bodies, carpets, and they can do that. They can protect these damage dealers so easily. The other downside to Hive Guard is their D3 damage. In a meta that's currently 2 damage, it's not. It's an up and a down too, because you go into something that's neg 1 damage, cool. Your 1s and 2s mean the same thing. But your 3s are nice. Your 3 damage becomes a bit better, but into Speedwire it doesn't give a crap.
Well, yeah, like the neg 1 damage, sometimes it's nice to have the D3 floating around compared to 2 damage, right? For that reason.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I think they're going to be something that we're going to have to contend with, especially because kind of like the Rocket Truck, they're such a plug-and-play unit. Like, you just keep the correct buffs around them. They do their thing. That could be like a small chunk of the army. And then at the same time, the rest of the Tyranid army is doing its own thing. So that's, I think, the biggest thing. It's not like this is, 1,200 points sitting back. This is like 500 points sitting back. So, yeah. But yeah, I think this is going to pose a bit of a challenge. But on the same note, like, if we're thinking about artillery already, maybe it won't hit us as hard. I don't know. Like if we're already scared of the Ruckers, like maybe it won't be as big a threat. But yeah, I guess the other things that are a bit strong in meta, unless anyone had something else to say about the Nids.
No, I think
cool.
that was it for me.
I mean, we've got Drakari. They got the Witch builds, they've got the Meat Mountain builds, and they've got Herd the Prey, which is strong. And a lot of people who have been paying attention to what's been doing well have kind of understood since about April. Wow, holy fuck, that's like 6.5 months. That Drakari has been doing super well. And then we've got T-Suns that are creeping up there with, players like Liam doing all right. But yeah, anything else you guys want to talk about that's doing well kind of locally?
Locally, I think we've kind of hit the nail on the head there.
We've got a few events coming up in the next few weeks, which we'll definitely talk about on the podcast. It's going to be some interesting stuff at Queensland Masters and a few other events coming up.
Yeah, that's it. That'll be exciting to see what happens. I think Liam might bring some, he might bring some Imperial Guard. You never know.
Yep. Tell me your list.
It's actually our Mono Inquisition, mate.
Oh, cool. He'll bring the little Gatekeeper tank commander. So happy with his new release. Rolls up.
3 damage.
Gets 1 hit.
Dude.
Yeah.
That 3 damage cannon.
My 500 white shields are coming.
Yes. Excellent. But I guess a few other lists that we haven't seen as much locally that are doing well internationally. The AdMech Flyers that won LGT was what's his name? Malakam and Rubio that won it, I believe, with the AdMech Flyers. And then there's a few other AdMech lists going around that are doing really well. More GK lists, we're seeing GK winning all over the place. A few people piloting Deathwatch quite well. Alex Harrison doing well in the UK as well. And Liam, I know you've been looking into the Black Templars release. What are you seeing in them?
Templars are actually awesome because one of the things that I think has let Marines down consistently is the lack of invulnerable saves without buffs, and Templars give you something to give your whole army an invo save straight off the bat. The other thing they have that I think is really cool, I'm not sure about its value yet, but every single unit, infantry or biker, can just take a relic from a list for points instead of CP. So it means that you can have an army with like 10 billion relics, which is actually just kind of, it's fun from like a gameplay and a narrative perspective. But some of the relics are, as you'd expect, absolute garbage. And in classic GW fashion, of course, there's a relic pistol. And so, you got to ask yourself if it's actually going to be competitive or not. I think it's got some cool stuff in it. I'm not sure it's going to shake up, the value of things like Raven Guard or Deathwatch and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think hot on the tails of the new Octarius book, Deathwatch got their new release as well, which is the Army of Renown that I've talked a little bit about. actually not on the Normal Blokes, on a few other shows. But yeah, I think that'll hopefully, find some play in the meta against some of these lists. But yeah, I guess, do you guys want to move on to what do you guys think can fight in this cruel world?
Well, our answers to this. Well, look, to deal with all these things, I've been testing the Drukhari Meat Mountain, as you like to call it, Denise. Which consists, for those who are unfamiliar of the Meat Mountain, it is consisting of essentially 8 Chronos or 9 Chronos, 9 Telos, and a bunch of racks. So it basically says, I'm going to try and not die, and I'm going to get While We Stand, Herd the Prey, and sit in my side and try and get primary towards the later stages of the game, and try to play the game that way. Because, as we've been finding out, it's very difficult to deal with that many wounds, particularly when they're that strong.
Yeah, when they've got defensive buffs on defensive buffs, you get invulnerable saves, -1 damage, and 5-up feel no pains stacked
That's right.
on top of each other. It starts to become, a bit quite durable.
And it definitely can put on some punch as well, because even now, like, I've been looking at the different builds. You can run Heat Lancers on the Talos, which actually becomes really annoying when things like the Flyers commit to you and whatnot, because each Heat Lance strength 8, -4, d6 plus 2 damage. So they actually pump out a bit of damage, and it can be quite interesting. Different way of playing. I will say very boring as well, but hey, it's so far a possible worthwhile avenue to test out.
Yeah, I think the Meat Mountain going into Speedwise not half bad. What's the strength of a Talos melee weapon?
Yeah, that's the problem. They hit with strength 7.
Yeah. So
Damn it.
that's they got fly, which is nice, and they can advance and charge, and they move 8. So they're good things to have. Having fly, I think, going into Speedwire is super handy, because you can charge over, say, through over models and stuff into buggies or into flyers, or obviously charge into flyers as well. I personally think melee is another answer to the Speedwire at the moment. Fly melee in particular. And the reason being is that, like, for example, the Blood Angels I'm playing with at the moment, I've just been like shifting a few things around, making bigger assault units, because then they can take a bit of a hit, and then they can kind of still have a couple of bodies left to do some damage. And I find in the Speedwire matchups too, especially if they're going to like try, dive a couple of flyers at you, if you can force them into some awkward angles, you can actually heroic into the flyers. And force them into angles where you put multiple units, 12 inches apart, and if they put a flyer in the middle, you can heroic from either angle, unless they blow one of them up, or it essentially forces them to come to you, but they don't want to overcommit and get behind your L's. And then if they do get behind your L's, they're all in heroic and charge range. And, and then essentially it doesn't cost you anything. You get to kill the flyer in your deployment zone. They don't get any benefit from it. So I think some armies with fly melee armies, so Blood Angels, Grey Knights are another good example. They can get the Inceptors. They can jump out of Rhinos.
I don't think they have fly though, hey?
Oh, they don't have fly? No, they don't.
Got little wiener fly.
Yeah, they got flip belts. Flip belts.
They got the shitty flip belt.
Hey,
I think...
sorry, Jordan, you finish. No, you finish.
I think, like, armies, you might even start seeing Raven Guard again. The Raven Guard just, appearing first turn with a bunch of power fists and just oppressively going F you and just smashing all the Speedwire. But I think the problem with the other thing that I'm seeing with the Speedwire is an issue that it's made me tech into it again. I had to add the Whirlwind back in. I took the Whirlwind out of my list because I didn't think I needed it anymore, because I was using bigger units to fight multiple units. But what's happened now is the Speedwire, and same with the Nids as well, with the Hive Guard, is that you go to charge them from behind an L, and they just overwatch you through the terrain with exploding sixes, rerolls, and Speedwire with just like a buggy unit of 3 buggies shooting 3d6 each at you from behind a terrain. It just kills the whole unit. So you've got to find ways to shut off turning off the overwatch as well. Because even when you're charging from out of line of sight, which is sometimes a benefit to a melee-based army, that's a trouble that people are running into.
Yeah, like thankfully the Hive Guard I don't think can explode sixes in Overwatch, but I believe they still get their reroll buffs and things. But yeah, I mean, if anyone wants, just off topic slightly, if anyone wants a really fun drinking game on a Tuesday night, just start the episode again and have a drink whenever we say Speed War. Holy fuck!
That's a long Saturday night.
But yeah, that's exactly right, Jordan. Like I think those, especially on the Marine side of things, looking at adding stuff like Ignore Overwatch, and I think adding Fights Last is a good play at the moment as well. But
yeah, it works into the GK, it works into Drakari.
Yeah.
It works into Tyranids as well. I think adding the Fight Last and the Turn Off Overwatch back into the list again is good.
I think we'll talk about Marines in a moment. But Liam, do you want to go on a bit of a mental journey on Custodes with us?
A little quest for the Emperor. Now, look, Custodes have had a bit of a problem in that they are really, really elite, and so in some ways they've struggled against more MSU, OBSEC heavy armies, and playing a mission and a few other things. That's no longer a problem because MSU gets absolutely orcamized by the speed war. Like it just gets put in the bin. But also MSU sort of armies really struggling to AdMech, GK, you're right, they're a skirmishing army, so they do well. So those lists are sort of phasing out. So the problems for Custodes are going away. Also, a Custody biker is quite possibly one of the most perfect profiles for all the things we're talking about right now. He's T6, he can make the weapons neg 1 strength, he can transhuman, and he can turn off rerolls to hit and wound. That's good into Speedwar, that's good into GKs, that's good into AdMech, and that's good into Hive Guard. That's good into a whole bunch of different armies. And so that durability is probably at its zenith. Like it's probably the most durable it's been in a really long time. The other thing that they do is they kill vehicles really well. The Virtus Praetors with their melter lances, whatever they're called, the salvo launchers. I've just called them every Imperial weapon under the sun. I apologize. Look, I agree that I think Custodes should get a Hammer Doom Fist claw. But yeah, so look, I actually think Custodes have quite a bit of play at the moment in terms of just taking like really big squads and putting all the CP into them and just praying you survive past turn 3. Because once the bikers actually get into combat, they might not kill buggies and stuff particularly quickly, but boy, they really struggle to be shifted back. So there's a few things that I think could actually go well for Custodes. I say that having never tested it and entirely talking out my ass.
Oh, you tested a list against me and you flattened me the other day with a mate a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, but how many Orc buggies were you playing, Denise?
Oh,
what kill team is that again?
Oh, the never heard of your kill team, mate.
Can Custody bikes deep strike?
Sure can.
Yes.
Okay, that's something.
And they can deep strike within 6 inches of a banner as well, and be closer to enemy walls.
And then charge.
And then cry, but in that order though, you can charge first.
Yeah, I mean I think that's a really cool concept, and Custodes having access to neg 1 to hit's really nice as well. And you're exactly right. Like even the Custode footmen that have a 0 up in cover and a 3 up invo still, rules as written. The second they get targeted by ruckers or something like that, they go boom, neg 1 strength, and they're winning them on 5s. So that's hitting on 5s, winning on 5s, which sucks. Absolutely sucks.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Custodes,
I think the other thing that's actually really good. Yeah, they're going to get a new book soon. And I think one of the things that is really great for Custodes in the current meta is that what you already have, like the stratagems that were previously good in a much more melee orientated meta, the stratagems you have protect you against the little incidental stuff that scores people points. Like you touched on different sort of orc lists. They're not all just buggies and planes. They have units that score you points. And the Custodes stratagems like heroic intervention and stooping dive and stuff like that, what was funny about stooping dive?
Imagine just stooping diving into a bunch of WAS bombs and just killing them.
I have imagined it repeatedly and romantically in my mind. And yeah, no, it's there's actually really good tech in that book that I think is very, very good in the current meta. Whether or not it pans out, well, I'll let you know.
Yeah, nice, dude. Well, that's really exciting for Custodes players. I know I've waxed and waned with my time playing Custodes, and it might be time to buy another army, mate. It might be time to drop $500 on a 2,000 point Custode army, you know. But I guess on moving on to my favorite faction, the Space Marines. And look, for the listeners, I'm really sorry if you're hearing a lot of Speedwire today, but it's definitely like tickled us the wrong way over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
So we're all thinking about it. The first thing, normally it's like the first thing you do to build a list is like, oh, what are my HQs? Now it's like, is it going to live against Speedwire? So it's a bit of a different.
What about survival?
Yeah, can it take a Wasbomb to the face? So it's a bit of a different thought process that we're looking at, and that's why it's coming out a fair bit. But looking at Marines, you know, Jordan, you're exploring some stuff with Blood Angels, like you said, you know, adding stuff like a Whirly back in. I've had a bit of a deep dive into the new Deathwatch Army of Renown, which opens up a few cool things. You know, unfortunately, with that Army of Renown, we can only really take kill teams, characters, corvuses, and dedicated transports. But it allows us to flip our chapter tactic all of a sudden, meaning, you know, if I'm going second against a big shooting list, I can pretend to be Raven Guard for a bit and be neg 1 to hit and be in cover. If I'm, you know, in a position where I want to hold ground so people don't steal objectives off me, I can pretend to be a Space Wolf for a battle round and heroic intervene when you come and take my objectives. If I want to hit stuff a bit harder, I can go White Scars, Blood Angels, things like that. So I'm mucking around with different mixed units. I think the Marine book is pretty deep. Yes, we're getting you know, pounded into the pavement at the moment, but found a few gems, mate. Found a hunter. It's going all right. Anything else you found, Geordie, that as a Marine player that you're mucking around with?
More Thunderhammers.
Find a way to throw them.
Yeah, I've found a way to throw them. They just don't ever seem to come back.
Yeah.
So obviously for me at the moment going into the Speedwire or even this is even really good for NIDS. This is really good for GK and for Drakari as a Blood Angels player. If you're not playing Death Company, get yourself in Death Company. The minute you go first with Death Company and they've got something on the table that's mushy, at 4 hammers, 185 point Death Company unit of 5 models with 4 hammers will kill it. And it will kill it dead. It kills, you know, 1 hammer is enough to kill almost 5 Hive Guard. You know, it's 5 attacks. It's perfect profile. Hits them on 3s if you got the banner for +1, full chapter master rerolls, wound on 2s, it dies. You've got into Grey Knights, you can fly over and smash a big Grandmaster in the face. Yeah, Cooley pops his 3 up. He's still going to get killed probably. Drakari, you know, if you're playing against Venoms, you know, one guy, if he gets, you know, there's so and into the Speedwire, you know, you can turn off a bunch of buggies. Like Thunderhammers are perfect for killing buggies. They get rid of Ramshackle. They're 3 damage. Buggies are 9 wounds. So 3 hammers go through, you got a dead buggy. So you put like 3 hammers in, you kill 3 buggies. It's a 300 point unit. You know, it's not even 300 points. It's 270 points, 280 points for 90 points each.
Other than 90 each, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's a 270. That's just absurd. But still, you know, you're killing more. You know, you're killing more points. You're still getting your efficiency out. You know, use the Whirlwind to turn off the Overwatch. So you know, there's some tricks from a Blood Angels point of view. The higher armor saves to just push up against cover, use your +1 to the saves, get 1-ups, and hope the flyers come over and try to dack you to bits and don't do much, and then charge in and kill them as well.
Geordie, did I tell you about the company chat I made?
Yes, the cheeky 74 points of company
70
chat that he
points.
is.
Did I tell you guys about this, Luke and Liam?
No, you haven't told me.
Oh, so
yeah, you've told me twice in person and
yes.
once.
Yeah, okay, just checking. I thought you might need to hear it a 4th time. So
Sorry, how many points is he? I want to hear it again.
He's 70, mate. 70. So you can take a company champion, give him a 15-point upgrade to make him a chapter champion. He's got 5 attacks. He fights first near characters, rerolls wounds against characters. 6-inch heroic, which is pretty sick. He's neg 1 to hit in combat, which is pretty sick. He only has 4 wounds, but he's got a 2-up, 5-up. 5 attacks base, though, which is nice. So you stick Imperium Sword on him, you give him the Blade of Triumph and Deathwatch. You can put a second Warlord trait on him if he's a Warlord. You can take the Space Wolf trait for Beast Slayer. So all of a sudden, when you're charging into Orc Buggies, he's got 8 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. That's Strength 8, neg 3, 3 damage, +1 to wound, rerolling wounds of 1 if you've picked that fast attack as your mission tactic. And you have a 1 CP strat to get 9 attacks. So if you run this little idiot into 3 buggies, he's got 9 attacks, hitting on 2s, rolling 1s, winning on 2s, rolling 1s. So he just eats 3 buggies for 70 points. Been having a lot of fun with him. Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah, a little 70-point fuckhead. If he dies,
how far does he move?
Oh, I can white scars him, mate. Advance and charge. He just moves 6 inches.
I'd just take a rhino and put like 2 of them in or something.
Oh, you can only take 1, really. But yeah, I just keep him wrapped in my backfield in vets, and something gets close, he just runs out. So I've got him on one flank and 3 assault cents on the other flank, and it's like, 6 buggies dead in a turn.
It's fucking Thor without his cape, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sounds like the old Captain Smash.
Yeah, he's Captain Fuckface, that guy. The only thing is he dies to a stiff breeze. But yeah, Marine players, have a look at the little company champ. He's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a cool little bit of tech.
70
points anyway.
Yeah, I guess Luke, Liam, sorry, me and Geordie have been doing a lot of the talking. Anything else you guys want to touch on?
I mean, from my perspective, I think that, and this is kind of a motivation for me, when the meta gets really oppressive and one-dimensional, which is me trying to be positive at the moment, when the meta is really one-dimensional, you branch out and you look at completely different units you otherwise wouldn't look at, and you build really different lists. So as much as we are being, I think, a little bit negative about the meta in Speedwar, because we have every goddamn right to be Games Workshop, also by the same token, now is the time to prove it can be done. Mm-hmm. And I think that anyone who really likes gaming in general, you do it for the challenge, right? Jordan, you actually said this before, and I actually do agree with that. It's kind of got a bit of fire back in my belly, to be honest. I think people enjoy the challenge, and if you don't enjoy the challenge, you're playing the wrong game. Because if you've ever tried to read a Games Workshop rule, you know their grasp of English is tenuous at best, and they use commas how orcs fire squigs. So end of the day, really, I think if you like a challenge, this is the right game for you, and the meta is the most challenging it's been in a while.
Oh yeah, Luke, anything to add to that, mate?
I think he's nailed it on the head there. It's while it may be a tough time with all these, as I said, it's a game of Twister. You're trying to cover too many bases, but I think what Jordan said kind of sticks. Just play your army that you love. Embrace the challenge. Embrace the speed war. Let it just roll over you like a tsunami, and just enjoy it.
Don't you worry, people. That nurse coming. It's coming.
We should call this episode the Alex Terracin Appreciation episode. Look what you've done, Alex. Look what you've made us do.
Yeah. Wow.
C'est Sophie mon kiki. That's French. So, but yes, the Speedwar is. It's what everyone's talking about at the moment, and it was like Drakari was, as Denise said, back in May, back in April when the book dropped.
That's right.
It was Drakari was the problem. Everyone was talking about how cheap the the raiders were and how cheap the characters were that could just go across the table and punch on with everything. So, all these things got somewhat nerfed. Liquefiers were a huge problem. Like all this stuff, it comes around. Speedwar's become a thing. Hopefully, GW pulls a finger out of their tush and goes, "Yep, cool. We need to maybe nerf this. We need to." I don't even think. I don't actually think the problem is freebooters. I just think the problem is the points cost.
If you ask Wayne, it'll be the weapon skill, ballistic skill 4+, mate.
I think it's just there's so many things you could sit there and talk about, but I think. We're kind of seeing this common issue, I guess, now too. There's 2 factions at the moment that have really cheap flyers that are really efficient, and that's Admech and Orcs. And they're 2 armies that they're just building around flyers again. This is starting to sound like Eldar in 8th edition. Yeah, so it's starting to sound like maybe early 8th edition when Space Marines were
Yeah,
rocking
when
up
the
with Storm
Ravens rolling
for
around.
200. Dude, I remember when there were 250 points. I still miss those dreams.
I think
miss
me
those
and you bought
dreams.
4 Storm Ravens, like between the two of us, 2 each within like 2 months.
You're like, hey, you got a Storm Raven? It's like, bro, how many Storm Ravens? I've got a whole box full of them. Boxes they don't get to fly around anymore. What are they? 350 points? It's ridiculous.
Dude, they're like 360 or something fully kitted. It's like fucked.
Oh, that's dumb. So
yeah. Anyway, yeah. Look, thanks for copping on, guys, and recording. I know we kind of just rambled on what our thoughts were of the current meta. It was pretty off the cuff, but
liberal,
sorry, Luke.
yes.
Yeah,
I was going to say pretty liberal. I was trying to fill your gap there.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks everyone for listening. This was episode 99, so we've got some exciting stuff planned for our 100th episode. But if you liked what you heard, please give us a like on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes. If you're keen to support us, we have a Patreon to help cover our costs at www.patreon.com/thenormalblokes. We'd also like to just remind and discuss again, we're doing a Movember campaign. And if you hit up our Facebook page, we've got a link to, our Movember page where you can donate. We're all, the 4 of us are doing it. We're all really keen to, support men's mental health and cancer research on Movember. And we've all got our different reasons for doing it, but we've got a team page set up there if you want to support us. We've actually got some really sick models that are getting raffled off. And if for every $10 that's donated, you'll get one kind of ticket. And at the end of the month of November, we'll raffle off these 3 models. Now, we've got a commission painted Wraith Knight, I believe, from Linford at Banshee Painting Studios. We've got a commission painted Repulsor Executioner by Hayden Walduck in the Normal Blokes colours. And we are getting a Knight painted up by Nick Wright. So that's pretty exciting. So we'll have more pictures on the page as well, but anyone who wants to support, please go ahead and give us your spare change if you can. It'll go to a great cause. Anything else to add, lads?
Nope, that seems good.
I'll probably just say Wayne Russell, because I don't know if he's been mentioned in the podcast.
I mentioned him about 2 minutes ago, mate. I think we're pretty good. 99 from 99.
99
yes.
from 99.
I mean, we can't go that many episodes without saying.
No, we can't.
Right?
We can't drop the ball now, can we?
Yeah.
That'd be horrific.
Oh, for the 100th episode, we should mention Wayne 100 times.
No.
Oh, all right.
No, don't
tune in for the next episode, guys.
See you guys. Take it easy. Have a good one.
Yeah.